Blog Talk Radio.
From Boulder, Colorado, Over the Top Radio, I'm your host, George Thomas. This is our final show in our Silver State 508 Fall Race Preview Series. And great guest to wrap this up with. You know, the Lantern Rouge. I got to give him a little trouble here, but just a perfect person for tonight's show. Really excited to chat with him. But before we get into the interview, this is your last night to take advantage of the Cardo Systems month-long Labor Day sale. Started beginning of September, and it ends on the 30th. So you got just a couple of more hours to head on over to cardosystems.com. Check out the Cardo BK1 and BK1 Duo. They are priced at 40% off, and this is your last chance in the month of September to take advantage of this sale. Opportunity to get the most popular communication system in Ultra. Great price, BK1 Duo, gold standard for communicating with your crew, phone calls to friends, family, bike to bike. Great way to listen to your music. And the website, one more time, cardosystems.com. And as part of our Silver State 508 and Fall Event Series, you do have the opportunity to win a Cardo BK1 Duo, which features 2 units. Just listen for our Cardo word or phrase of the show, message the answer to me via Facebook, or like Over the Top Radio on Facebook and send your answer there. And the person with the most correct answers is eligible to win a BK1 Duo. It looks so far like we're going to have a few of you that have given us all the correct words. But in case of a tie, the winner is going to be chosen via a drawing. And we're going to announce our winner during the post-508 wrap-up show, which will take place a day or two following the race. Our guest tonight, perfect again for this show. He's a 508 Hall of Famer. I think if there's a division to race the 508 in, he has done it. He's finished solo. He's been on relay teams. He's been on tandem relay teams. I think the only thing Jim Ryan hasn't done is race on a recumbent, but I could be wrong. Jim Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, George, very much. Thanks for having me tonight.
I've really been looking forward to chatting with you. Have you raced the 508 on a recumbent?
No, I have not. And although I've certainly raced with folks on recumbents, I've managed to maintain an upright position while riding. So I'll hope to keep it that way for a while longer.
What makes the 508 so special for you? And before you even answer that, how many of them have you finished?
I think this will be the 10th 508 that I've ridden in. So. And I've crewed in a couple of them, so it's been a regular staple of my October riding schedule for many years. And in terms of what makes it special, I guess, you know, the first time I went there was in 2000, and I crewed for Gary Byrell, who's a Totem Bear, and you know, kind of got introduced to ultracycling there. And Gary in his rookie year had all kinds of weird challenges and had a kind of a difficult night, you know, heading towards the finish, and suffered with a lot of difficulties. And for some reason, when I got to the end of that and he finished the race, I thought, you know, that looks pretty cool. So, from there, in 2001, we got together with a 4-person team, and it all started at that point. And I think I've only missed really 1 year. 2005, I think, was a year where I didn't make it to the 508, but most years I've been back in one form or another. So it's been a great course, and always, you know, one of the things that I guess makes it so special is that there's a tremendous group of people that kind of all come together in the desert in October, and now in Reno in October, and so it's going to be a little bit of a different setting, but it's just a really great place to bring together a lot of folks who share a common passion for riding, so it's cool.
Now, if you're anything like me, and I don't know if you are, aside from riding bikes, there's not really necessarily a division that's given you your most memorable finish. They all have some things that are very memorable about them. Can you hit some highlights from when you went solo, when you went relay, and when you went tandem relay?
Yeah, you know, I think I can remember, a couple of highlights. I think I think the second year that we raced Team Falcon, we had a pretty competitive team, and we ended up. I think we might have won the division we were in, or whatever. But that was back when the 508 still had kind of the team rules, where you could, what I like to call the RAO, Race Across Oregon rules, where teams can transition whenever they want to, and so. I definitely remember that year, all of the teams and the solo riders all kind of converged at night on Towns Pass, and we were neck and neck with another team, which I think was called the Poodles at the time, which were some Ram veterans and 508 veterans, and it was a real battle just climbing the pass, and it was so hectic going up the pass that you actually were losing track of like which van was your vehicle, and there were riders everywhere, and music was blasting, and it was absolute chaos, but it was a heck of a fun time, and we were doing crazy fast transitions going up Towns Pass like every 2 to 3 minutes, and that's really what kind of enabled us to kind of gap the team behind us, and we maintained the lead that we got at the top of the Towns Pass all the way to the finish. So that was a super memorable time. I would have to say on the solo ride, a lot of riders who rode in 2009 kind of had to go through the crazy winds that happened after the Furnace Creek Time Station and going through Badwater and Death Valley, and it was just absolutely gnarly. The headwinds were so bad, and I used to be quite a bit heavier as a rider, and then over the years I kind of slimmed down, and so I was really having difficulty just staying upright on the bike, and at one point the wind just kind of had a huge gust, and it brought me right to a stop on the flats, and I had to dismount and then hang on to the van mirror until we could get a lull in the wind to just get going again. And it was, to me, I know a lot of riders got very discouraged at that point, but it was so crazy. There was nothing you could do but sort of laugh at the whole situation and just keep pressing on. So that was a pretty phenomenal year, and that was a super rewarding race to finish, just because of the difficulty in that night. And then I think the tandem event, we got together, Paul Kingsbury and Wanda Tachi, now Wanda Kingsbury, who were my crew, and met actually at the 508, and somehow managed to get hitched after that. But we rode a 2-tandem team in 2012, and I'm not a huge, as you know, George, I'm not a real accomplished tandem rider, and I have a tandem, and I've ridden it a few times with my wife and a couple of times with my daughter, but really it just mostly hangs in the garage. And so Paul and Wanda, who are really expert tandem riders, we agreed, and we were at a training camp in February. We agreed to get together at the 508 that year and do a 2-tandem team, and so they were able to find a unsuspecting fourth teammate, Jeannie Tomkowski, who's out of New York State. And so Jeannie and I rode together in the 508, never having ridden together before until the day before, the Friday before the 508. We got together for like a 45-minute training ride when we met up in California, and then rode the race together on that, starting on Saturday morning. So that was pretty crazy. And I had one other sort of organized tandem ride all year, which was in March. And so we had no idea how that was going to work out, but we really clicked, and she and I rode great together, and Paul and Wanda did. And we had that kind of mixed age group bracket, and we set the record. Now, the irony was there was a ringer team that came the year after that in 2013 that Katarina Berg was on that team, and they were obviously going to smash the record, but then thankfully the Park Service came in and changed the route. And now the course has been changed permanently, so our record will last forever. So it was really maybe the highlight so far of all the rides I've done was that we were able to secure the record through thanks to the bureaucracy of the federal government. So pretty amazing.
Are you the guys that contacted the Park Service?
No, yeah, we reached out to them. Yeah, no, that we didn't do that. No, all kidding aside, no, that wasn't us.
Now, it was funny to hear you say that you were a heavier rider. I mean, anyone who's met you in the last number of years, I mean, you are a stick, and I mean that in a good way. And when I first met you back in very early 2000s, late 90s, you still weren't heavy. I only saw you for about 1 year where you actually had put on some weight and you had some forced time off the bike. I believe you ran into a car.
Yeah, I had an accident in New York State, and I got a truck hit me in upstate New York while I was on a ride, and I got T-boned pretty good by a guy who ran through a red light. So that required a nice visit to the hospital in an ambulance and some quite a bit of time off the bike. And then I think the first ride I attempted after, the first race I attempted after that whole thing happened was actually RAO 1 year on a team. And so I kind of came out to ride in RAO, and I think we were, I think at the time you had switched to a four-person team format, but I think I qualified for a fifth person.
And I remember we got a picture of you riding that year, and you were like, "You cannot post that anywhere," and I still have it.
Yeah, I believe you planted like a professional photographer on Bake Oven Road. Yeah, and it was 100 degrees, and my jersey was unzipped, and I just looked hellacious. Yeah, it was pretty, pretty amazing timing on your part, George.
So what was it that really motivated you then to lose the weight and become the rider you are now? I mean, you finished Raw, you won 50 plus when you finished Raw, I believe. You just won 50 plus out at Hoodoo this summer. I mean, you've really taken off as a rider. What did you do? Well,
I think really the one is just changing diet, but the real sort of switch happened when my wife Tammy had been having some issues with food allergies, and so she went to a naturopath and got kind of a comprehensive, allergy test, and there were quite a few foods that she was, eating on a regular basis that were causing problems for her. So she just kind of said, "Hey, I need to switch my diet up at home, and do you have any issues kind of switching it up with me?" Which was primarily a vegan diet, I guess, but we might occasionally indulge in some ice cream or something like that. But so I said, I didn't really think much about it other than, I don't want to buy 2 sets of groceries and deal with preparing 2 meals or whatever. So I said, yeah, sure, why not? So that really was the switch, and that was, already I think my food intake was, kind of under control, and I was, doing a lot more events. But really in the last 3.5 years or so, 3 years, that's kind of been the major switch, and I think it's just kind of paid off in terms of overall fitness and health. And then just having regular rides and regular events to participate in just kind of keeps me honest, and that was, I think that's kind of the magic trick. So hopefully, I'm hoping I'm a late peaker like some of these other David Holt and some of these other guys that they get a few more years under me. Maybe I'll be a little bit quicker.
This is Over the Top Radio from Boulder, Colorado. We are visiting with Seattle's Jim Ryan. And it's time for our Cardo BK1 Duo word of the show. And the word tonight is a bit of an inside joke. It is Brody, capital B, R-O-D-I-E, capital B, R-O-D-I-E. Go ahead and write that down. Send it to me via Facebook message or like us at Over the Top Radio and send your answer there. Again, this is our last show for the word of the show, and we are going to determine our winner this week, and we will announce the winner at the 508 wrap-up show following the race. Jim Ryan, new course. One of the things that made the 508 really special were those climbs, and everybody knew the names of them. Towns Pass, Jubilee, Salisbury, Sheephole. I mean, those are legendary in ultracycling, and what's it going to be like not to have those this year?
Well, it's obviously, one of the things, it's a great point, George. I mean, I think one of the things that makes the return to any of these ultra events, whether it's the 508 or REO or RAM or RAW, is, you start to recognize and memorize and understand parts of the course, and you can tie that to kind of your effort and your rest schedule and your nutrition and everything else. And each year you get to sort of dial that in a little bit better. So the first thing is just the basic fact that it's a new course for everybody, So, but it also doesn't have, yet anyway. It doesn't have any of those sort of marquee, the Towns Pass or the Sheep Hole Epic, kind of climb, or an RAO, the Clarno climb, it, which always makes me curse like a madman. But it's so I think it's going to be, I think everybody's going to go into it almost like statistically right now. You get kind of the tools that we have today are pretty amazing. When you've got Ride with GPS and you can kind of map out what everything looks like, and do Street View on Google and see the terrain. But it seems to me like in general the climbs are a little bit less steep. They're more gradual. There are some longer climbs on there, but I think it's going to favor the folks that are kind of that like the climbs in Colorado are never really over 6%. It's kind of that kind of thing. So I think folks I think Mick Walsh, for example, is going to be a guy who I think the types of climbs that are in this race are really going to favor him. They kind of remind me of a lot of the longer sort of moderate climbs that we have around here, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how everybody kind of plays it out. But they're going to have to just sort of get familiar with the course, kind of in the online sense, and go in as a first timer without that deep knowledge about the route and the turns and where the hill kicks up and all that. I mean, that's all going to be new for everybody.
Now, one of the things I really like about you as a rider is that you don't just say I'm a solo guy, or nah, I can't do that. I'm just a team racer. You do it all. And your attitude when you're racing solo or when you're racing team, you just always seem happy. You look like you're in it for the fun. Even though I know you're taking the racing very seriously, you still just look like you're out there with the primary goal of having a good time. Is that true? Or are you a good actor?
No, well, I've definitely had. I don't think I've ever been in a position where I've been on the route where, I've felt like throwing in the towel, or it's been too much, or even if I'm feeling lousy, or, not doing well, or my nutrition has gotten, with the food changes I've made over the last few years, nutrition has become less of a crazy escapade. Where when I used to use more sort of like, marketed sports nutrition stuff, I used to have more. It was a little bit more hysterical at times on the course, where I would, be having stomach distress or whatever. But those days have pretty much gone, and so it's really just dealing with, you sort of get in that zone where you're in a pretty good mood, things are going well, and you just have to be prepared to just deal with whatever comes. I think you learn in the first few races you do that. You set this whole plan in action. You sit down with your crew. You kind of have that. And I remember early on when I was doing these races, we'd have all these sort of planning conversations and contingency plans and everything else. And usually within the first hour of the race, some new thing that you never anticipated screws up the whole works. So you start to learn to roll with the punches a little bit and be flexible and try to make adjustments on the fly. And that's part of the fun. Is just the uncertainty of it all, and the camaraderie you get with whether it's your crew or your teammates or the other racers out on the course or whatever. So it really is just a fun thing. And as they say, and I believe this, the training is the hard part, and if you're well prepared and you've put in the miles and you've suffered in the rain up here in March or whatever, by the time you get to the actual event, it's all systems go, and it's a pretty rewarding and fun experience. So yeah, I really like the variety of the different formats, and it's always a great time to see everybody on the course. And then once in a while, you'll have a crazy race director who will offer you a Slim Jim Preem to beat some other two-man team to the top of a hill, and at 2 a.m.
And you go for it.
Oh, I sure do. Yeah, yeah. Who would pass that up? Yeah.
Now, you got me laughing about Slim Jims now. You've been out there. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Race Across the West this year, and it's hard to bring up an event like that and think of it as training for what you're doing later on. But you raced or you competed at Race Across the West. Yourself and your teammate was on a recumbent. And do you feel like the shape you got in there, did you come out more fit than you went into the race, and has that helped you and at Hoodoo and now at the 508.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we had we had kind of in that open division, and so, and I had the same experience, Team Ram when we did in 2011. That was kind of the same experience where, by the time you get to the end of the race, your fitness level is so high. And I remember getting, into like Gettysburg during Ram 2011 and just saying to my teammates, I wish I could bottle this, because this level of fitness I have right now, it just feels amazing. And so after Raw, I felt pretty good. And then the next week we did the Cascade 1200, and which is the Randonneur event that's up here by the Seattle Randonneurs, which is a great event, and it's a beautiful, beautiful course and lots of great riders and amazing volunteer support. And I came down with some kind of a flu bug like a day and a half before, and it was nasty. And I sort of hemmed and hawed, like, geez, should I do this or not? And what should I do? And I ended up going and just kind of riding my way through it. So I think I think Raw I felt super fit at the end, but I think I might have been a little run down. And then I did the 1200, and then I just kind of rode my way through that and tried to stay away from other riders and not get anybody sick. And then by the time I got to the end of the 1200, then I started to feel really, pretty good. And so then it was almost like we called an audible on Hoodoo, because there were some sort of fluctuating plans about that. And then in the end, I was able to get Steve Teal and Gary Byrell crewed for me, and I was able to get out there and do Hoodoo. So, which I felt, I felt great the whole time. Wasn't tired, felt terrific. So I think, just having those miles and I think team especially, when you do longer distance, Raw or Ram, and you do it as a team, and you share the load pretty well, I think it really produces a really high level of fitness at the end of the event.
Now, what have you done? You mentioned Steve Teal, Gary Byrell. I mean, you guys are always together at these. Ultra racing does not split you guys up as friends. How have you been able to maintain those friendships through the events? Do you just not, you're out there with your friends being first, better than, or more so than the results? And you also have a lot of the same crew come back. Or you guys crew for each other?
Yeah, we do. It's tougher every year, and as Gary's girlfriend will say, you're going to have to make some new friends because you're running out of crew, So I think we, in general, we try to, balance that out and cover each other, and that's one of the reasons, quite honestly, why the team format is a great format, is because it is really hard to burden other people, especially when you talk about things like Raw and Ram, where you're going to take people away from their jobs and their families, and you can't do that all the time. But when you do a team event on like a 500 miler or whatever, you can have the team plus a crew person or two, and if you go kind of low brow, like the folks from Texas down there always tend to crew for themselves and just kind of do a grassroots approach, and that's what really makes it kind of fun, and more feasible to actually do these things on a regular basis. Because I think if you try to go whole hog and have a full on big crew, and every time you get together, one, it's probably going to put a strain on, friends trying to just get together, but two, it's going to be, hard to actually pull off on a regular basis. And then I think the second part of your question is, when we go to like, if we're all going solo, and, Gary Byrell and I have ridden several 508s solo, at the same time. And really what happens there is just, we just get to the start line and we just do our own thing, and I think that's the key to ultra anyway, is not to get sucked up by the guy next to you and go outside of your comfort zone or outside of your game plan. And I think we just, know enough to, once the flag waves and we take off, that it's, we each do our own thing, and wherever the other person ends up is great.
Another thing you've done, you volunteer at races too. You're out there officiating, and you've officiated RAO a number of times. Are you ever out there officiating, volunteering, crewing, where you're just thinking, why did I do this year? I really want to be out there riding.
Well, I had that feeling at RAO, I can tell you that. Yeah, I mean, you think about, I think that happens every time, because, anytime you're out there where there's a race going on and you're seeing, great competition and the course and the weather and, just all the all the challenges, it's always something that you feel that you'd like to be part of that. But at the same time, it's, what goes around comes around, and anytime you can kind of help out, and it's not just helping out like the race organizer, but it's helping the guys and ladies and teams and everybody who are out there on the course racing, and they just need, official support or whatever, or if you're crewing or whatever. And I think those are those times where you're able to sort of like participate in the event from a different perspective and learn from it, but also sort of give some energy back to the group that's out there riding. So it's a cool thing to do.
Of all your riding, what's the favorite place that you've ever ridden a bike? Not necessarily raced it, ridden it.
I would have to say that my favorite place. You still there, George?
Oh yeah.
Okay, I got a crazy signal on my phone here, but my favorite place in terms of where I've ridden is probably Washington Pass in Washington State. That's the North Cascades Highway on Highway 20, and it's an amazing ride. It's part of the Cascade 1200 route, but it's a road that's closed during the wintertime. They call it the Alps of Washington. It's an amazing climb. There's two passes right next to each other, Rainy Pass and Washington Pass, and on the western side you kind of have the wetter climate of western Washington, and then on the other side of the Cascades it drops down into the dry valley of the Mito Valley, it's called, and it's a spectacular ride, and it's a beautiful road, and it's very lightly traveled and just utterly scenic. So you can string together some amazing routes. You can do an out and back over that pass. But every year, I think a lot of the Washington riders always try to get up there and do some riding at least 2 or 3 times to just experience the climb up the pass. It's got a really epic kind of view at the top and some epic switchbacks, and it feels very, sort of like super big mountain kind of a climb, and it's amazingly scenic. So it's a great unspoiled part of the world, and it's probably my favorite road to ride on.
And the last couple of minutes we've got, what's your goal at the 508 this year?
Well, my goal, let's see, not to gamble too much in the casino since it's the Starlight Hotel. That's number one. I need money to get back. No, I think we'll have, I think we have our team is, myself, Gary Byrell, Wanda Kingsbury, and Paul Kingsbury, and Wanda and Paul are both, they've been riding tandem for quite a while, but they decided they agreed to go on single bikes for this. And I know Wanda has been secretly putting in the miles and putting the hammer down. So I suspect that we're going to have at least a couple of folks on the team who are going to have some pretty fast splits. So, but I think there's actually quite a few teams on, or at least 2 or 3 teams on that 50-plus mixed category. So, I think as long as we have a good, consistent race without a whole lot of time wasted during the transitions, and it'd be great to be kind of in the mix with those other teams, especially as you get towards the end. At Raw this year, we had an amazing, just crazy finish in the last 6 or 8 miles where we were just putting the hammer down head-to-head with another 2-person team, and it was a ball. So I'd love to be kind of like those teams be close together and have a really sort of, competitive finish there in the last leg. So we'll see how it goes.
Now, is Gary riding an upright?
He's riding an upright, yeah. Yep.
He is? Wow.
Yeah, he's we're converting him back, George. He's being
I've got to give you 2 minutes to share that raw finish, because I've been wanting to get that story out there. This was amazing.
Yeah, so we were the last big climb heading towards Durango. We got to the top, and I did probably the last half of that climb going up to the top, and then super cold at the top, and Gary was sleeping in the back of the van, so I agreed to just take the descent down, and I didn't stop to put on any clothes, so I just rode as hard as I could to stay warm. And that team that was ahead of us was, by the prior time check, they were quite a bit ahead of us. I want to say 45 minutes or something like that. And as we came down towards Durango proper, I came around the corner, and their van and their rider were on the right-hand side of the road going at a fairly slow pace. And so I just ripped by them. and all of a sudden it was like poking a bear. because they put the hammer down, and it was a full-on, 25, 28 mile an hour blitz all the way into the park, and we beat him to the finish line, which was a blast, and I could see as I came into the park, I could see him still coming down the edge of the road, and across the little ravine there, and I came into the finish. We all parked, then they came in, and then it turns out they started 3 minutes behind us in Oceanside, and we beat them we cut 2 minutes out of that. So they beat us by a minute. But, in the end, the victory was short-lived. But at the time, it was like pretty ridiculous because I really, as soon as I saw that guy, I just lit up, and I was like, we got to put the hammer down now. So it was a pretty cool, fun way to wrap it up, in the dark, and trying to navigate at that speed to the finish line in the dark in a little park was pretty tricky, but we pulled it off, and it was pretty exhilarating.
Now, as this show is wrapping up our Cardo BK1 Fall Race Preview Silver State 508 Preview Series, just want to get a word in there about the system. Jim, you are a user of the Cardo. What do you think of it?
I think it's great. We used it in 2013 at the 508. Super clear audio, and really the entire event. We just had good battery power, and even as you're like kind of riding in the wind. So distance-wise, you get good audio from pretty far away from somebody, and then on a tandem, obviously, it's a super piece of technology because you can stay in contact with the stoker, pretty easily. So, and then of course, Cardo's been around before bicycles, doing a lot of work with motorcycle intercom systems, so which I'm a big fan of. So, terrific product.
All right, and this is your last chance to take advantage of the month-long Labor Day sale. Head on over to cardosystems.com, 40% off both the BK1 and the BK1 Duo, cardosystems.com. And again, if you're trying to win that Cardo BK1 Duo from Over the Top Radio and Cardo Systems, the word of the show is Brody, capital B-R-O-D-I-E. Send that to me via Facebook message. Like us at Over the Top Radio on Facebook and send it there. Jim Ryan, thank you very much. I wish you all the best at the 508 this year and really appreciate you joining us here on Over the Top Radio.
Hey, thanks, George. The show's got a lot of panache.
Nice, and we'll be talking about that very soon.
All right. Hey, thanks, George. Have a great night.
You too, and best of luck to everyone who's competing this coming weekend. I wish everyone a safe and just meet all your goals. I hope everyone has a fantastic time out in Reno and racing the loneliest highway. Great event, and look forward to a great race. For Over the Top Radio in Boulder, Colorado, I'm George Thomas. I'm George Thomas. I'm George Thomas. I'm George Thomas.